It's April 7th. Hello, we're doing robot business. Mostly business, but a little bit of robot.
Robot business.
Robot business. The worst kind of business.
Is it?
No,
I would
actually,
say
it's probably not.
government would be worse in terms of business. Well, the big business story that maybe a glimmer of hope. I think at this point we can all agree that higher prices are the only solution here. That's how the market solves things. Going to have to let that happen. And TSMC is saying, yep, that's how it's going to be. And if you don't like it, well, who else are you going to talk to?
TSMC has canceled chip price cuts and promises a $100 billion investment surge. Now, keep in mind, they're also looking at building a 5-nanometer plant, production plant, whatever, here in the U.S. But this is a really interesting way to put it, too. They reached out to all the people that buy stuff from them and said, normally with the march of technology, prices get cheaper. I mean, imagine that. Imagine Amazon AWS getting slightly cheaper every year because computing costs less every year, right? Wow. I mean, what a concept. But TSMC saying, well, we can't do it this year because obviously.
Yeah.
Thinking
And
of profit.
when it comes to new kinds of chips, perhaps that is also part of the thing that will save us, because obviously we are really dependent on one kind right now, and we're starting to see the potential, I guess more than the potential with the Mac, of the ARM platform. And so ARM is saying that, hey, we're not stopping.
ARM unveils new technology that is yet another way that it's going to compete with x86 on the desktop, or so Bloomberg would have us believe.
And particularly that Intel market share. Yeah. They want that Intel market share.
ARM is coming for x86 at the server, at the mobile, desktop. The most surprising thing to me out of all this is not how good ARM is. It is shocking how good ARM is, compared to x86. It is how bad the Qualcomm Snapdragon stuff has been. And not bad is not the right word. It's just not remotely as good as expected for ambiguous reasons. I mean, Microsoft beat Apple to the ARM punch, and the M1 is breathtakingly better than the ARM in the Surface laptop that's based on Qualcomm Snapdragon. What went wrong?
So that's not just the x86 there. Well, I mean, it's still x86, but not just desktop. They're saying that, the world is going into Internet of Things, all this other stuff, the stuff that Intel does, but not as part of their main desktop server type stuff. And they're saying, yeah, we're going after that as well. We're taking them down.
We can be literally everywhere. We can be like the Linux, except of hardware.
Amazon, it has been revealed, had some big plans that the pandemic seems to have set aside. Do you think they'll go back to these?
Yes.
Probably almost surely.
Yeah.
Amazon explored opening home goods and electronics discount stores. So basically all their returned merchandise and all the stuff that's just sitting around the warehouse that they're having trouble moving, they're going to ship it to a warehouse that the public can peruse and get their filthy, grubby mitts all over it. And from there, then, well, if nobody still wants to buy it, it makes sense for it to be in a landfill.
It's going to be tough on those people who buy the return pallets.
Yeah.
It's going to destroy their business model.
Yeah. I did that once, and I didn't really get anything very good. Turn me off of it.
And maybe one of the reasons that Amazon has put a pause on some of these plans, or at least isn't focusing all of its effort on them, is because it's now focusing all of its effort on something else, something far more important to them. And if you ask yourself, well, how important to them is this really? You only have to look at the series of steps they've attempted to take, these minute, tiny little, butterfly effect changes that they're willing to fight to the death on, because they know any advantage is something they have to have.
Amazon loses effort to install camera to watch counting ballots in pivotal union vote. We are, of course, talking about Alabama. I think it's in Alabama.
Yep.
So suddenly drew a blank. Amazon warehouse workers are unionizing in the state of Alabama. And, that's their right to do that, but it sure is making Amazon nervous AF. So they're saying, hey, we just want to make sure there's no shenanigans here if people actually do vote to unionize. Let's put in a camera, which, might spook people.
And the camera is not just for when you vote. The camera is for when it is sitting there unattended, because they think that there's going to be shenanigans after hours. They probably think that because they talked about possibly trying to do it. The other thing that's crazy about this, the way they laid out how the workflow of this process, everybody votes, and then you have to put your name on it. It's not, anonymous. And then they pull them out one at a time, and they're like, okay, Bob voted to unionize. And then everybody's on the call. I guess you do it in person during normal times. And Amazon gets to look at that name and search their records and try and give any reason that should be thrown away. Like they say, wow. Oh, no. Bob is he's not a warehouse worker. He's a subcontractor so he drives for this company. Don't count that. And then they have to throw that away. And they go through every name individually. Imagine the misery of that call.
Amazon's like, hey, we want to install cameras to watch the counting of the ballots while you guys are angry because you're being surveilled all the time.
Yeah, it is kind of an ironic thing, right? Like
it's about as miserable as one of those calls where it's like, when I rotate my iPhone and back, it's got extra padding on the side. It's like, that's a bug in the iPhone. I can't. There's nothing I can do about that.
And when it comes to
just call up Google.
Yeah, call Mr. Google and explain.
Get him on the phone.
But when it comes to labor laws and companies doing things that they probably shouldn't, Amazon is certainly not alone. Up there at the top with the other big tech companies, they're all kind of nasty to their workers. Google in particular had some interesting rules about pay.
Google promises not to muzzle staff on pay, settling labor case. So I guess some people were using internal Google tools to figure out, like, hey, why is he a class 3 engineer and I'm a class 4 engineer? I don't understand.
Or I think it was more like, why is he a class 3 and I'm making lists as a class 3, as a female class 3?
Well, there you go.
And Google was like, no, we don't talk about that internally. And that is kind of like, I think some companies have rules against it, but everywhere it's sort of like a moray. Like, oh, you don't talk about that. And these people, these young communists, they're all about it. And Google tried to silence them.
That's not okay.
Yeah, not right. Microsoft has a big contract, really big.
Potentially.
And I gotta wonder. I understand the advantages of this technology, but that's a big number. My tax dollars. Is there not more important things right now? Are we not?
That's part
like
of the
fact that our
bill.
water supplies are being poisoned literally every other week.
Or, we're having an issue with the immigration and all that stuff. That's a bit of a crisis. We are having the supply chain stuff, the chip shortage. I would rank all of these higher than this.
Microsoft wins U.S. Army contract for augmented reality headsets worth up to $21.9 billion over 10 years. So they could take delivery of up to 120,000 augmented reality headsets. That seems like a lot of headsets.
Yeah.
When can I buy these at Army Surplus?
But what I wonder about is how hardened are they in terms of, can I get dust in them? Can I get them underwater?
Not right now, probably, but maybe they'll be okay by then.
I don't think the modern battlefield is a good place for that kind of technology. Who knows? They are not alone.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm imagining, like, Steve, 1989. He's doing reviews of MREs, and he's like, also, I got this at the Army Surplus store. And then he does a review.
It has a built-in copy of Beat Saber.
And Steve would tell us that it's the best AR headset in the world, and it's amazing, and you should totally try one, and it would be a lie, just like his MRE reviews. His MREs are nasty.
He's back. He just posted the other day.
I didn't know he went anywhere.
He was kind of gone for a little bit, or maybe we weren't seeing him because of the algorithm, but he posted.
I lost interest. I don't know. It's one of those YouTube channels that I was like just binging and going crazy, and every time there was a new one, I'd watch it, and then one day I was just done with it.
We've got to build Feature Man a new video editing computer like ASAP.
Yeah, talk about ASAP because the clock is ticking.
Oh,
he's been doing a lot of PO box unboxings lately,
yeah.
So I thought he would be up for that.
Yeah.
Should we reach out to him?
Yeah.
All right. See if I can get his email address. Somebody's going to pretend to be us. But
sorry.
Microsoft is not alone in trying to get into the AR game. Another big player.
Apple is aiming to introduce or announce its mixed reality headset with in-person event in next several months. This is going to be the Newton of augmented reality headsets. I can already feel it.
Yeah, I don't know about. It seems like a big headset doesn't match the cult style profile,
Yeah.
right?
Not only that, I mean the M1 is one of Apple's biggest successes since the iPhone. Think of all of the duds between like the iPhone and the iPad and the Apple M1. So this is going to begin another cycle of products from Apple that don't make any sense. Touch bar, butterfly keyboards.
You will be able to find one of these on Surplus shortly after. I have a feeling you might not care. Cryptocurrency, of course, continues to be huge because that Bitcoin price just keeps going up. I don't really keep up with Ethereum, but I think it's also rising. Not quite as much, but you'd still be very happy if you bought it a couple of years ago. And when it comes to normie consumption of cryptocurrency, there really is only one reliable game in town, I would say, wouldn't you?
Yes.
And that is Coinbase.
Coinbase is decided to list itself April 14th. You think its stock is just going to be immediately meteoric? It's going to be like the old Netscape days?
I don't know. It's interesting. They're not doing new shares. They're not doing a public offering. It's just, they're listing. So, yeah, it's got all the buzzwords, right? But at the same time, you got to look at all these other companies that's getting into the space.
Visa and PayPal would definitely be an existential threat to them.
The thing about Coinbase that kills me is I understand they have to have that security, and I do appreciate the security. But at the same time, I can't tell you how many times I'm like, you know what? Let me just throw Bitcoin's down. Let me just throw $100 in there, and Coinbase is like, nah, bro. We don't. Your IP has changed recently, so we're gonna make you wait 48 hours.
Wow.
So it's difficult, and after 48 hours, you don't want to do it anymore. So
Yeah.
Here's a crazy story that when you talk about, patent trolling and stuff like that, this is maybe at the top of the mountain. But amazingly enough, the common names that you think about when you come up to these ridiculous lawsuits and trying to just get an IP catalog and abuse it, are actually the victims here, which is kind of refreshing, maybe.
SCO Linux, Fear, Uncertainty, and Doubt returns from the dead with IBM's response in this article. So it's Zinus? Zinus? I don't know. I'm going to call it Zinus because my sinuses are congested.
Yeah.
They bought the rights. SCO went bankrupt because of this. Literally this. Like, SCO actually had a reasonably okay, successful commercial Unix, and they just gouged their customers until non-existence. And they became a patent troll, which is how most of these companies die. It's how Oracle will probably ultimately die, although they're doing a reasonable job with their cloud thing, so maybe they've got a reprieve from death for now. But SCO, this company is returned, and they said, IBM is infringing on it. But instead of Linux this time, they were saying some of IBM's products, like AIX, were infringing on SCO's copyright,
because it originated all from
that
original thing.
So, I don't think this will be successful. But then again, I would have said that Oracle would never have been as successful as they are with the APIs against Google. Maybe SCO's big problem was one of timing and not one of just being a patent copyright troll.
But also, the political winds, more and more big tech companies are under the crosshairs.
Yeah.
So maybe right now you get a judge or a jury that's like, IBM, they're big tech.
Yeah,
they must be wrong.
They've obviously acted unethically.
And they have.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make them guilty of this.
Meanwhile, Apple unethically gets the FTC to go after Qualcomm, and nothing will happen to them for that, for misleading the FTC about FRAND and all that.
And speaking of corporations who are just doing terrible things, and again, we go back to getting somebody on the phone, because I'm not sure that anybody at SEGA necessarily knew this was going to happen. I think mostly this was automated. But they tried. They were like, okay, we did what you wanted, but the AI juggernaut on the other end, that Sonic the Hedgehog-shaped AI, keeps spinning and rolling into them over and over.
We need one of those "Don't tread on me" flags, but instead of or "Don't step on snake" or whatever, but instead of it's the algorithm and it's us, because it's like once again the algorithm has got the man down.
Or that fantastic snail that we had earlier.
Yeah. We still don't have a name for him, but that's okay. The chat will give us one.
Sega lawyers demand immediate suspension of Steam database over alleged piracy. So the algorithm, Sega's algorithm, picked up an information page about a game as containing a game, which was incorrect. And the company, it's really just two people. It's a hobby. It would be like Level 1 getting one of these things.
It's just the Steam API. All they do is hit the Steam API and show you all the information you can glean from that. Anybody could do it.
And it's just like the game, like information about the game.
How many people are playing it? How many installs? How many launches? And stuff like that.
And they emailed back and said, "Okay, well, but this is just information about the game."
But they took the page down.
You can't
it's
download
gone.
it. Well, they didn't respond immediately, so they took it down. And then Sega contacted Cloudflare to say this customer's not complying. Gosh, that sounds familiar. It's like, oh, he's resisting arrest, or it's coming straight for us.
But even Cloudflare, they're like, we're not really sure what to do here because Sega's not responding. And this all these limitations are timing out. We're supposed to take this down, but we know this is not real. And the copyright law is so disgusting that they might not be able, even though everybody knows it's not real, they might not be able to ignore it, which is just
So stupid.
The algorithm crushing. It's like, and like, if you have a hobby project like that and you have to deal with that, doesn't it make you just want to not live anymore?
Well,
Right.
certainly would make you want to not do the hobby project anymore. NFTs, man, NFTs are hot right now. And everybody is trying to figure out a way to get in on it.
I was reading a post on a forum. Somebody bought one of those for some obscene amount of money. And they were like, hey, it's not working anymore. And it's like, yeah, the NFT was just a link to something on the internet. Like, the link is still there, but the token is not part of the blockchain. It's just the link.
So wait, the thing in the blockchain was the link?
Yes.
And the link is dead?
Yep.
That's hilarious.
Wow.
That's maybe a little bit more of a ripoff than this one, but still, I just can't see the value here.
The NBA on NFT. Top Shot is playing the long game in the NFT craze.
So this one right here, this is, this big dunk where he just basically ran over that guy. This was the top selling one ever.
$208,000 US.
But you can go on this Top Shot website, and they actually have, a marketplace for NFTs that come from NBA games.
But
moments.
If you don't save that and this website disappears, there's all you own is the little marker.
Now, is that true? They're not actually putting the video encoding
right
onto the blockchain. They also said that they tested some of the software, and anytime they talked about crypto or blockchain, if they used those words, the NBA audience was like, no, not a part of that. Give me basketball. And they're like, just a moment. It's a moment. You want to buy a moment? Yes. Yes, I want moments.
There's something so dystopian about all of this where it's like it's not enough just to own an obscene amount of objects. You also have to own like moments in time. Everything is monetized.
But I think that's actually good because owning it doesn't do anything bad to it, and it doesn't deprive anybody else from enjoying whatever that is. If a wealthy person buys a piece of art and puts it up somewhere, unless it's been like really carefully preserved or a copy made of it or whatever, no one else can enjoy it.
But that's definitely true. The art, if we're going to call it art, the art is fine. But on the other end, that's the same argument I believe is snake oil.
Yeah.
Like what is this person buying? What value are you giving?
Listen, if I had some of these and I could sell it to a wealthy person and they were happy, I would certainly be happy as well.
I suppose. It does create an interesting thing where eventually there'll be a marketplace, I imagine, for these. And things like sporting events it'll be happening in real time, that we measure the value of your performance in actual dollars. Like, okay, the third minute of the third quarter, you had 2 steals, 4 rebounds, and that was an amazing minute for you. $100,000.
here's your NBA 2023, championship ring, which is also a USB drive that contains the the encryptographic tokens for this, that, and the other thing that happened during the championship, whatever.
Yeah, we're getting into a weird place. And the big question, I think, is what do we turn into NFTs and start selling immediately?
Store.level1 text.
Crystal,
what were you gonna say?
With like the NFT stuff too, it's like, sure, like it's, there's still a copy of other things out there. So like you can still watch the video clip somewhere else, but like
Right.
How long before they start trying to, jack the price up by saying like, oh, I bought this and only I can own it. Same thing they do with like artwork.
Legally, I don't think they don't have that right.
There's not a
right?
precedent for it yet, but
The copyrighted work doesn't exist on the blockchain. It's just a reference to it.
Yeah, so I don't think they could stop you. That might change.
yeah, that's what I'm afraid of.
I could see this. The NFT thing actually would be a great way for handling real estate records, for a period of thousands or tens of thousands of years. Think about really old cities like Rome. It's like you needed something with blockchain would have been useful for property records that are immutable and go back thousands of years.
I think they actually were working on that. But NFT is not the way to do that.
No, well, I mean,
Use the
same kind of mechanism.
use the same existing title infrastructure, but just record it
Yeah.
on a blockchain. SpaceX had another interesting flight this week or last week.
Did you see the pictures from the beach and like the area, like the wildlife? There's just like birds and stuff that are on rocket parts. They're like, what is going on? SpaceX Mars rocket prototype explodes during test flight. I was using the power of my brain to psychically communicate that with you. I forgot that you had to read it. My bad.
So it came down in heavy fog, and you couldn't actually see the explosion. But when the fog blew away, there was no Starship.
I wonder.
Well, there was a Starship, but it was scattered all over the beach and the
yeah.
road. And
Do you think the fog had anything to do with it? It was like the AI camera system was like the holographic banana. It was like, I don't know what to do with this.
I wonder how much it needs cameras, because it's got an altimeter, don't you think?
probably.
And it's got the orientation. I'm sure it doesn't need cameras to know its orientation.
If that was the failure, I'm sure we'll never know. Like only like 20 years from now, the scientist that was working on that is like, remember when Musk lost his mind because there was a bug? If the rocket was landing in fog, it thought it was sideways.
I mean, if we look at Tesla's other projects,
That would never happen.
they certainly rely on cameras perhaps a little too much.
I assume that they are cleaning up all the debris, and they're not just going to leave it to sit.
Eventually, yeah.
These days, everybody has their own streaming service. I just saw that new one, Peacock.
Yeah.
We're getting into that. Now you got Paramount. They got rid of, what was the thing that Discovery was on? CBS.
CBS All Access, right?
Yeah, right. So CBS All Access is gone. Now that's Paramount Plus.
Oh.
Everybody's got to be a plus. And it's just churn. There's so many of them. What do you do? But thankfully, it seems like when they finally run their course and they're ready to die, there will be a predator there to gobble them up. And maybe we can consolidate back into something sane.
T-Mobile cuts its own TV cord and moves to partner with YouTube TV. So T-Mobile has said, you know what? We're out. It's just crazy negotiating with these media companies. We're just going to let YouTube deal with that for us.
And you do get an extra $10 off per month, at least for now, for being a T-Mobile customer. I think at this point, I could never have YouTube TV because of the number of times they've annoyed me with that pop-up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really think you'd like this. Well, just give it to me.
I do like what the guy says where he's like, people don't want more streaming services. They just want help navigating the services that already exist. And it's like, wow, that's refreshingly honest. I mean, he's still wanting the money, but...
Can you imagine something like the Plex service where you give the Plex service is like, I'm going to give you $7 a month, and this is the kind of stuff that I like to watch. And, after a few months, it accumulates, and it's got like $20 or $30. And then it pops up and it's like, here, in your account, you've got like $30. Here's all the stuff, the media that I can broker a deal for you to have on your Plex server. And it's forever because it's like you can buy the digital media from somewhere. And, with that $7 or $8 subscription just building over a long period of time, eventually your media library would be incredible.
everything you just described is the polar opposite of what media companies want.
Yeah.
And yet it's what people would buy.
Well, what was the Clubhouse? Yeah, Clubhouse was real hot there for a while. I don't know if they've done a Android version yet.
Clubhouse is to audio chat as Slack is to IRC.
It is weird. I can't imagine if more than 4 people have the ability to talk in one of these rooms, that it's not just chaos. You'd have to manage that somehow. But everybody wants to be a part of it. And if you're a company that happens to have just way too much money right now, why not buy a bunch of them?
Spotify jumps into social audio, acquires sports-focused live audio app. The acquisition comes amid a surge of interest in live audio following the meteoric rise of Clubhouse, an app that has drawn more than 10 million users in under a year. Do you think that Clubhouse would have been as successful if everybody wasn't cripplingly lonely from lack of contact during a pandemic?
Probably had something to do with it. But I think it still would be successful.
Oh, there's human contact in the magic black brick.
I think there's still a lot of really pathetic people out there who are just dying to know every thought that Elon Musk has. And as long as he's on Clubhouse, I think it would be successful.
That's scary.
Yeah, it is.
Subscribe to our Patreon to listen to our podcast. Equally
Which we haven't done in like 3 months. Kristen,
we
that was
need
not
to do.
the time.
We're behind.
That was
So
not
we
the
will-
time
we
to
will
advertise.
start.
We're gonna catch up.
We're trying. We're just clawing.
We got to do the
our way.
Q&A this week too. We got lots of questions. Submit yours now.
Now, if you've been waiting to get on the crypto bandwagon because you say to yourself, hey, listen, crypto, you can't really use it. I need something that I'm going to be able to get out there and spend. I need to spend that money. Well, maybe you got a few new options.
PayPal has launched to check out with crypto service. Yeah. So with PayPal, you can check out with crypto now.
This is interesting because there's no fee, but there is a spread, which is pretty common in the financial world. So what's going to happen here is technically we're not going to charge you a percentage, but when we go out to the market to pick up your crypto that you're about to spend, you might not get the best price because we might keep a little bit of that. So that's maybe not the worst way to do that. But at the big thing here is apparently these are not, there is no person-to-person crypto spending here. You cannot move this crypto in and out of a PayPal account or control it at all other than to spend it through the PayPal spending platform.
Yeah, they're using one of those artificial blockchains to keep track of the settling, I think. Didn't we have a story on that?
You're getting confused. It's Visa.
Oh, that's Visa.
That you're thinking about because Visa is also getting into the crypto game. We talked about this a couple weeks ago, maybe last week, and my question was, how are they going to settle that? Because it seems dangerous to just float Bitcoin all day. Well, now we have the answer.
Visa is using stablecoin to settle their transactions, and they're hoping that that will also lure all of the financial technology companies, the fintechs, if you will.
Certainly safer than doing the other way.
So this is a blockchain that, by design, follows the value of fiat currency, which is probably not a terrible idea right now because it seems like we're heading into another era of just incredible inflation, just bananas level inflation.
And speaking of bananas, did you go watch the hottest movie
I did not.
in the world this weekend?
Literally didn't care.
Well, a lot of people did. I think actually most of them were in China. I don't even know if it's open here, did it? I watched it.
I haven't seen a movie in ages.
Was it any good?
I didn't watch it in the theater, but when the monsters were on the screen, it was amazing. I mean, they did a really good job with these monsters. And this goes even going back to Toho. You know, it's easy to be like, oh, these Americans have ruined it. But even in the Toho movies, when the monsters weren't on the screen, it was like, oh, come on. What are we talking about here? The thing that drove me most crazy about it, because teenagers. There's a couple of teenagers, and you follow their adventures through most of the movie, and it's like, oh, there's monsters fighting. You're showing me teenagers. But then they're like, oh, the Godzilla and the Kongs, they're ancient enemies. There was a great war once upon a time on the hollow earth, and the two almost wipe each other out. And I'm sitting there thinking, can we see that? That sounds interesting. Really would love to see that. But anyway, I've spoiled the headline.
Box office, Godzilla vs. King set a global record during this unprecedented time.
Also, this looks like a screenshot from Kong from the movie. This is Godzilla from the 90s. Could they not get a better one of him?
The trailer also made King Kong seem rather huge. I don't think King Kong is normally that large, is he?
No, they mess with it. But the original Godzilla vs. Kong movie, they were the same size.
Oh, okay.
I mean, how else are you going to do that? It's almost, you have to play it in such a way that Godzilla it's like Batman versus Superman. It's not realistic. Godzilla's so much better. He's got all these extra powers. They fought in the water at one point. And it's like, come on, guys.
So would Godzilla rather fight, a Godzilla-sized King Kong or 100 King Kong-sized Godzillas?
I think you got to go one-on-one. That's the way to do it. Yeah, actually, I felt like they did a really good job because they did it. Kong was clearly the good guy in this situation, and Godzilla was the bad guy. And they did it kind of like pro wrestling. So, first encounter, Kong's in chains. They're in the water. He's sedated, and he just gets beaten terribly. But as a viewer, you're like, no, it's not fair. Kong needs another shot when he's fresh and he's not in chains and it's not in the water, and they set you up for the next one. Then it's Kong versus the Flying Serpents, a nice squash match to remind you how good Kong really is, to set you up for the final, and then there's a run in it. I'm not going to spoil that one for you. We talked about Mr. Stallman in the past couple of weeks, and
that hasn't settled down at all.
After the controversy, he basically said, nope, I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. And I got to say, I think that is the only move when cancel culture comes after you.
Yeah.
You cannot apologize. You can't back down. You just have to say, no, I'm not doing it.
Is it okay to reiterate that you are not, in fact, going to eat children?
I don't think you bring that up. Say as little as possible. But even when you do that,
somebody might take that the wrong way.
Yeah, even if you hold the line, I think he's doing the right thing, it might not be enough.
The Open Source Initiative, they've written a letter for RMS's reappointment to the Board of Free Software, and it's like, look, no, you have to hold them accountable for past behavior. So they're not on board, and that's...
And they're out. They're out of the Free Software Foundation. I think Red Hat as well, right?
Yeah.
Red Hat also pulled out.
I have to admit, there's a level of nuance here that's going on that I don't understand.
Well, I suppose both sides have some pretty relevant points, but we have to drill down to what's best for everybody. And I just don't think we're ever going to agree on that.
Do I care that my roofer is a flat earther? Especially if he's a damn fine roofer?
I guess that's a little bit different because, well, does your roofer go around harassing round earthers?
Not unless they bring it up.
Well, again, when you bring in the sex and gender type of thing, that's still not okay. Even if the round earthers are walking around in crop tops and booty shorts, still not okay.
Mighty fine flat earth today we're having. It doesn't go out of your way to let you know he's a flat earther, but
sweetie, the earth might be flat, but that ass ain't. Work it. And we have.
Why can't we retain any female talent? I just don't understand.
He wasn't that overt with it, was he?
No. Well, I don't. He was in the past. Like in the past, when he would latch on, like in the past, I think what was happening was that he would latch on to something that he thought was an intellectual defect in an argument that he was making. But, to like what I think Krista would say, he's never experienced that. And so he doesn't understand what is trying to be communicated to him.
I've heard a good argument about the Cuomo thing that's kind of the same. It's a matter of, this is a person who has been in a weird position of power and maybe never really learned how to interact with women properly. And this worked for him for a long time. But now it doesn't. So I guess it doesn't excuse anything, but it's interesting to think about. Taking a time warp back to 2018, you might remember that Tesla had their own spat with the unions, and a lot of people were talking about unionizing. Mr. Musk was not a fan of that, and as usual, he went to Twitter to voice his concerns. And finally, the U.S. Labor Board has made a ruling here.
Tesla broke U.S. labor law with anti-union efforts, according to this watchdog, with a single tweet. The tweet was, well, if they unionize, they're not going to have stock options anymore. That was not okay.
And you're not allowed to make that threat. And they did say, yes, we think that is a threat. You can't do it. He has to delete that tweet. I bet that hurts him more than the penalty that he has to pay.
From 2018?
Yeah.
He probably just rolled his eyes and was like, fine. Click.
Probably made somebody else do it. I'm not doing it. And another threat, perhaps, to his empire as another company, and this one is a name that we know, getting into the big EV game.
Chinese smartphone maker Xiaomi to make EVs using the Great Wall's plant, according to sources. So that's a lot to unpack in that headline. There's a battery manufacturing plant called the Great Wall. They're going to make batteries for electric vehicles.
And they have never made car stuff before at Great Wall. So this is new to them. They didn't mention what kind of, like these are going to be mid-range cars or whatever, but I imagine they'll be like entry-level mid-range. We'll probably never see them.
I noticed that you deliberately left out 3 or 4 stories this week about new breakthrough battery technologies.
Yeah. The carbon
no,
fiber
this time
battery.
it's going to be the one.
I'm not wasting my time reading about a carbon fiber battery until you can show it to me.
Mail it to us. We'll play with it.
So the Amazon drivers, we have learned, are going to get a new friend in the van with them. It's going to be an AI friend watching them with a camera at all times. And that sounds terrible. But for some reason, this was too much. I would be more okay with this than the other stuff the camera does. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes. Amazon drops plan to track mask wearing by drivers with cameras. All that other stuff that they're doing with cameras, that's still on. But they're not going to automatically flag your behavior for not wearing a mask with the camera. What kind of, like, this has got to be a distraction.
And I got to think that they are going to flag it. They're just not going to make it public, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
It's literally HAL, the HAL 9000. It's like HAL, unlock the van. It's like, I'm sorry, Dave, I can't do that. You're too terrible of an employee. I'm just going to drive back to the warehouse and get a new Dave.
A new Dave.
I still see some people driving alone. And if you're not alone, maybe it makes sense. But I've seen people driving alone wearing masks. Isn't the cabin filter on a car way better than any mask you're
Yeah, I don't
wearing?
really understand that as much.
I've done that a few times just because I've got like 3 or 4 stops I've got to make, and I just don't want to think about messing with my mask the entire time.
Yeah,
I guess
that's
that makes more sense.
all those calories.
Though sometimes I'll get out of the thing and just forget I'm wearing it, or forget that I need to wear it.
Well, you wouldn't forget that if you were on a plane, because that is a flying petri dish. And
Yes, it is.
now that the airlines are trying to get back to doing business, they got to try to figure out something to make those passengers feel better about that.
Swiss robots use UV light to zap viruses aboard passenger planes. What was it? What was the robot's name? Violet? I can't remember. The one from the hospitals. So
I don't
she's got a
remember.
stewardessing job now.
Either.
Although, looks like she's got some attachments, some new attachments to do the disinfecting.
I think stewardess is sexist.
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
think it's flight attendant now.
Sorry. Flight attendant. I didn't mean to assume the robot's gender. My sincere apologies.
But it makes sense. I got to think though that it's basically just they don't have a great picture of it. We saw it in the video there.
There's a video, yeah. It looks like in the video, though, that it's being pulled with a rope.
Yeah, well, I mean, why put a motor in that?
But I mean, at that
push it.
point, why not just have your actual people go through with UV lights instead of spending all this money on a very expensive cart?
Well, that's my criticism of this thing is there's going to be a lot of surface area that light's never going to touch.
Yeah.
It's got wings.
Yeah, but as the seats rotate down and the cracks in between the seats and stuff under the seats.
Well, the article and the pictures in the article made me think of this thing as like the slowest moving thing ever. So maybe that would be enough UV light with all the stuff that's bouncing around.
How much is the exposure time? That's a good point. Maybe that's why there's the rope, because you want to drag it and then let it sit on a row and then drag it and let it sit in a row. Something like that.
But again, imagine you're like already an overworked flight attendant and they're like, we need you to pull this really heavy cart. And she's like, can I just wave the UV things over it, you know? And they're like, no, you have to pull the cart.
We need a better article on this. Where is Kyle Wiggers?
I imagine that the wands, the UV wands, are not putting out nearly enough power either, right?
Yeah.
This thing's really probably lighting up that plane.
Yeah.
I wonder if that has I imagine it has to have some kind of effect on the longevity of the materials of the seats and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The tray
Yeah.
tables.
They'll break down in UV light almost all materials too. Yeah. It's like, you know those suntan glasses that are just like the opaque plastic except for a tiny little black piece of... It's like, you know, when you go on the plane, you got to be wearing one of those. Otherwise, the robot just blinds you.
I'm sure the person who's dragging the robot with the rope does have to have some kind of
Yeah.
vision protection.
This is my beekeeper outfit that has, you know, a welding harness on top for eye protection.
And that was our first robot story. And our next robot story, it's time to pour some out for one of the fallen.
Drink.
Again, I don't think that she will be missed very
No,
much at all.
not at all.
Microsoft shuts down Cortana on iOS and Android. Farewell, Cortana.
Rip.
Do you think, Krista, do you think that had anything to do with gender?
No.
You know,
I think it's just no one. I don't like any of the little assistants on anything.
I don't. It might not have been in this article. It was a story I think I left out because it was gender based, and why argue about it? But it said that people overwhelmingly trust female AI voices more than male.
That's interesting.
I thought
Wonder
Cortana
why.
had a male voice in the UK.
Oh, I think this study was in the UK that I was reading. Interesting.
Meanwhile, Cortana is still there when you install Windows 10. It just won't go away. It's like a bad penny.
Now, because everybody hates Cortana, and let's say they get rid of Cortana entirely, but they do another Halo video game, is she going to be there?
Yes, absolutely.
Think so?
Because they really liked her in... Everybody really likes her in...
But now, do we hate her now?
in Halo. Well, I mean, she's just not a competent assistant.
Can we separate the two?
I think
Are
we
any
can.
of them though? Like Bixby's also awful.
Yes, Bixby is perhaps the worst. Like, what is
Yeah.
even Samsung thinking?
But they got
Every
rid
time
of.
it's like, oh, do you want to use this? And I'm like, please, no.
No.
I didn't mean to hit this button.
But they changed the right swipe. It's not Bixby anymore. It's something else now. Something equally useless.
You can install an app that'll let you change it, but you can't change it out of the box.
But they changed it.
It still ultimately leads to Bixby.
But they call it something else. It's like it's not the Bixby homepage.
I don't remember.
Anymore. It's you know what?
Bixby is worse than useless. Like, they're all useless. They're all terrible. You know what really just drives me insane is, like, we have all these assistants and we have all this stuff and it's like this whiz bang technology and basic quality of life things with a phone.
Samsung Free
Oh.
is what it is now.
Yeah.
Do you want to update it? No, I don't think I do.
No, because it's going to install a bunch of spyware and be terrible. Because our, basic experience with mobile phones is still god awful. Things like, I'm going to set some applications and save some files on my phone and like save some pictures and save ringtones. I'm going to put some MP3 ringtones on my phone.
Wait. You said on the phone? I think you meant the cloud.
What year is it?
Yeah, I was like, oh, I'm sorry, you're not using Google Drive. Let me just delete all your stuff. That's your punishment for not using Google Drive.
Do better next time.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically how it is.
Well, OpenAI has GPT-3, and it is pretty incredible. And it's interesting because they're talking about in this article, they're like, some people are even looking at ways to put this into production in business. Well, let me tell you something. The Chinese Amazon sellers are way ahead of you. Because if you see those, there's a lot of descriptions, and they have brackets around the bullet points about the product. I guarantee that's an AI because it's written so poorly. It's not just bad translation. It's bad translation and AI doing the
On
copywriting.
top.
OpenAI's text-generating system GPT-3 is now spewing out 4.5 billion words a day. People really like GPT-3 because it's almost convincing.
It's definitely a cool thing. AI Dungeon now has a survival mode.
Ooh.
You can't alter it at all. It remembers everything, supposedly, and you have to try to stay alive. I lasted 15 prompts in my first attempt. It's a cannibal island.
Oh. Oh, it's the forest.
Yeah, it's a lot like that, actually. Well, the 15 lines that I saw of it before I was killed. Tesla's full self-driving update. It's this is a little bit older story, so this came out a while back, but I couldn't help but include it because they point out some very obviously bad things about it.
Tesla's full self-driving beta is just laughably bad and potentially dangerous. Before you downvote, go check out the article because it's got some rather compelling evidence. I would be interested in seeing your calmly written textual rebuttal before considering my opinion.
And there's a video that points out what the early beta testers are experiencing, and it's pretty terrifying.
I don't know if I saw this earlier in the week, and so I think on the video there's a really amazing content in the whole AI. So even with AI, even with these wonderful models, garbage in, garbage out, that still rules. When we talk about algorithmic bias and it's like the algorithm is racist or the algorithm is sexist or whatever, yeah, because the data set that it's built on was trained on was built by human beings with those characteristics. That's how it works. This is based on millions and millions of miles of people driving Teslas. This data set, it makes sense. The Tesla drives like an idiot Tesla driver. It's working perfectly.
Like a self-important.
Yes.
Like everything, the world revolves around me.
Yeah, like you know
like
how
everybody else when I'm making a turn.
When you're turning left through an intersection and you drift into the other lane, those drivers always do that. The AI is working perfectly.
I hadn't thought about
People
it like
don't
that.
understand that. They think that like anything computer is just like some sort of black magic, and they don't realize like a human has to input something for it to spit out the thing that you want.
Well, Chris, so when is the last time that you visited the Level 1 Minecraft server?
Oh, it's been a little bit. I've been meaning to check it out again. I saw some posts on there. People found pandas on the forum, and I was like, oh, I should go check that out, but I haven't been.
But you didn't.
AMD sent us
go.
hardware for a new Minecraft server.
That's nice. I don't know if Linode, I don't think they're charging us for it.
No, they're not. Well, they're supposed to move it in like April, I think.
All right. Well, it's been a good run. I don't know how popular it is at this point.
It still has a lot of people.
Really?
Yeah, there's still quite a few people posting in the forum with like screenshots and stuff.
Well, anyway, maybe we could breathe some new life into it by doing some AI machine learning stuff with it. Why not?
Watch an artificial intelligence grow a walking caterpillar in Minecraft. Yeah, you gotta check out this video because it is kind of mind-blowing. It's Conway's Game of Life, but in Minecraft.
But souped up. Because in the Game of Life, there's two kinds of blocks, black and white. And in this, there was, 35?
Yeah. I really like the it's also mind-blowing that the Game of Life is Turing complete. And so there's a video of somebody building the Game of Life in the Game of Life. Like the building the computer and the logic to run the Game of Life in the Game of Life. And it is mind-blowing.
So... yeah, that's something you can get into if you want to with Minecraft. It's not really a playable experience, but
yeah,
it's fun to think about. It's fun to look at us trying to recreate the building blocks of life.
On this week's episode of The Runaway Inflation is Upon Us.
Yeah, this is it's I always get these like Flippy, for example. Flippy just makes you so happy. You're like, oh, look at him. He's so happy and he's doing his thing. And then you do think about,
all the people
sitting at home that used to do that job. And they keep pointing out, and we've talked about this from the beginning when we talk about automation and robots. There's always a paragraph at the end. It's like, no, it's not going to replace workers. Don't worry. How can you make that argument here?
Boston Dynamics' new robot doesn't dance. He has a warehouse job. You should check out the video because this is coming to a UPS and or USPS distribution facility. Oh, well, I take that back. As long as DeJoy is in charge, this is never coming to the Postal Service. But UPS and FedEx, man, they've probably got an order in for 100 already.
So the big thing about this guy, the most impressive thing, of course, is his little head unit. I don't know what you call it. It's gripper. It's a vacuum controlled. Yeah, sucker's probably the best word for it. Vacuum controlled, and it can pick up almost any kind of box up to, was it 30-some pounds?
Yeah.
Impressive.
It can pick up ammo boxes.
But more impressively is it's incredibly lightweight, and its arm is incredibly lightweight, and it's also really well balanced, and it understands its own balance so that when it's picking up a heavy box, there's no risk of it falling over.
Huh. The one thing I noticed in the video that I watched is that in the demo, it's always picking up the same size box. I wonder if strange loads would throw it off a little bit.
They talked about that. They don't have the more advanced suction cup arm yet, but they're working on it to have non-flat surfaces be picked up as well. And that'll be necessary.
Yeah. So everybody always mails a soccer ball by just putting a label on it.
But if you have 3 employees now, right? One who picks the items, one who boxes the items, and one who carries the boxes to their destination. Now you need one person.
This thing schlepped its own conveyor belt into one of the trucks to unload it too. That was just mesmerizing. Because it's like, oh, it's a truck full of boxes. And it just, literally hauls the conveyor belt behind it. And then it's just like, and the truck's unloaded.
And this guy, they talk about the how it's not going to replace people and all that stuff. And, it's not working together. It's not dancing. But in the video, it does a little kind of like, there's 2 of them, and they're moving in perfect unison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it has that thing like chickens and owls, I guess all birds have it, where the head is just sitting still independently while the body's doing all kinds of stuff down there.
Yeah, like a gimbal.
Yeah. It's amazing. We're going to be seeing a lot more of these guys.
Yes.
And a lot more homelessness.
I'll say, like, on one hand, it is very, very cool, but on the other, it's like, man, that has devastating consequences.
Never been a better time to learn to be a programmer and or developer.
Yeah, if you're working on robots. Somebody's got to service these guys, too.
Yeah.
Spend your life traveling around to Amazon warehouses, fighting through picket lines and servicing the robots.
It's literally going to be like from the RoboCop movies.
With less live ammunition.
Or more. All right, we'll see you Friday.
Krista, give us Robot Apocalypse goodbye.
Bye. That was kind of robot-y.
That should have been a Theranos goodbye.
But your
I can't
robot,
go very deep, though.
Your robot arms were perfectly smooth. They didn't ever stop. Like you did the opposite of the robot.
I can't.
You're too human, Krista.
I'm too human. I need to watch some Zuckerberg videos where he eats toast.
I spiked into the red there. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have screamed.